fellow South Africans, and I've got a couple of videos I'll be putting up today, and I've got a shout out thanks to Davy again and Ria, who've both brought me some really good material. But let's start off on a totally different track. You probably aren't aware that once in every 1,000 years you get to a year, and that year is 2018, this 1,000 years, where if you add the year of your birth to your age, regardless of when you were born, you'll come up with 2018. Isn't it interesting? Just a bit of useless information, but you know, that's quite fascinating. Now, let's get on to the serious shit, okay? And we'll start off with what used to be a really good South African army. And I'm not joking when I give you these facts. They're all over the internet. You can go and check this up for yourself. It's about the state of the South African army and how they look after their resources. If this wasn't true, it would be, believe it or not, stuff. Unbelievable. Okay, military vehicles and tanks should be painted red or blue in South Africa, and I'll explain to you why. In fact, I'll let the Minister of Defense explain why. Okay. She says, last year alone, we lost over 74 military vehicles and tanks after they were painted camouflage. Camouflage blends in, making it difficult for us to find these vehicles when we accidentally misplace them. I'm not joking, this is what she said. This is what the South African Minister of Defense, Nosiviwe Nolotando Mapisi Nakwakala, says after over 1,300 camouflage tanks in South Africa, armored personnel carriers and combat support vehicles have mysteriously vanished since 2015. Now, I reckon that rate's right up there with that chief officer of IT in SARS. In fact, I think this is probably even more outrageous. She goes on to say, last year alone we lost over 74 vehicles and tanks after they were painted camouflage. The vehicles, which are normally painted in subtle abstract designs with colors such as field drab, forest green and desert sand in order to avoid detection, were originally housed in drab fields, green forests and sandy deserts throughout South Africa and other allied nations. The enemy is sophisticated and quick, she said. These transports seem to have disappeared almost immediately after we finished camouflaging them. Whilst the current disposition of the vehicles is unknown, Parliament is placing blame for the disappearances squarely with the minister. Defending herself, Mapisa Nakwakala said, we need to review military guidelines for vehicles paint to ensure jeeps and tanks in the future do not disappear. I mean, this is crazy shit, but apparently it's true. We must use colors like red and blue instead of camouflage. Camouflage blends in, making it difficult for us to find these vehicles when we accidentally misplace them, she said. Now, it could only happen in South Africa. Now, getting to a more serious issue, and it's just a shout out to all South Africans. There's a lot of support for you happening in Australia, and it is growing. The video that's attached was a smallish rally that was held recently, and the guy, as you can say, is saying Australia needs to get behind the white population in South Africa. I'll let you watch the video. It's quite an interesting one. Okay, guys, take care and have a lovely evening. Bye for now.
Ladies and gentlemen, no one saw this coming a month ago, and because of every one of you, the world is watching from today. That is a victory in itself. month ago, I was just another politician vaguely aware of what was happening in South Africa. And then a thread popped up of an 87-year-old man with base of skull fractures, a blown out orbit, and a face covered in bruising. And the story behind that photo had to be shared. 2 weeks on, that post continues to be shared 10 times every minute, 24 hours a day around the world. At its peak, it was being shared once a second in nearly every country that has Facebook, which is most of them. I first want to congratulate every one of you for wearing colours of unity, support for this country that you love, because only by unity, support and positivity will there be a solution. And that includes Australia in that solution. But this letter I'm carrying back to Federal Parliament tonight deserves an official response from the department and not from me. It deserves an official response from my great colleague Peter Dutton, who started this whole motion in the first place by speaking out. And let me tell you how easy this could have been. He could have ignored that completely. He could have sat behind the PC crap that we see in federal departments who continue to say the murder rate here is no different to the murder rate down the road. And this kind of social relativism fails to ignore the obvious fact that an Australian 87-year-old sleeping in their bed is by definition probably safer than someone in the drug trade living on the streets. We have completely different circumstances. This is not a count of bodies. This is about whether you face risk as a citizen in your own country, facing persecution and fear of death due to your race, ethnicity, religion or your beliefs. And that has stood our immigration system through the test of time. Circumstance in South Africa, whatever information I'm fed as a poll, whatever you see on social media, we can only ask for two things, and that is the truth. We need a South African government that starts counting the toll. We need a South African government that doesn't paper over reality. We know there's a South African government with civic and resourcing issues, but I certainly see a very fat mansion in Dubai. I see a 400 million rand mansion owned by the former president. There's no shortage of resources in South Africa. There's a shortage of political will. This is a nation that had the heart while the world watched on to pull off a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But suddenly in 2018, Truth and Reconciliation is all too hard. And it shouldn't be too hard. Now, I'm going to finish because time is valuable. Rosana, I want to say we must think about solutions. And in Australia, there'll be a unique political solution to this. And everything else that you do that doesn't lead to a solution is wasted energy. And it could even make it harder to get to the solution. First, you're all here in a sense of positivity and not living in the past. You want this problem fixed. We all recognise as a farming nation, we both are, how important farmers are, linked to the land, the beauty of the toil that they do, and that they should never face this kind of fear. But the world is a frightening place, okay? There is crime everywhere. But this unique form of targeted crime that is effectively saying, get out of our country, is something very different to the crime down the road that young people might be involved in for a whole host of other reasons. And it's that political persecution, if proven, it's not yet proven, if proven by an Australian government that needs to investigate. Because as I finish, I want to go for where I started. Peter Dutton asked a very simple question. It didn't need disagreement from any other party. It didn't need a Labor Party saying it's a racist thing to do, or that we don't need an immigration process based on race. For God's sake, that's what we're not talking about. If you came to this rally, they would know this is about doing the right thing by our existing laws of political persecution. There are visa subclasses that are there, but until today, until all of you were here today, I don't think those in Immigration and Foreign Affairs looked very hard at the problem. That's what you can change. So make sure when you get out there, the message is simple. They must look hard at what is happening, because then the truth will do the rest. They just need to say, we're going to look beyond the Middle East for evidence of political persecution. Perhaps it can be happening in some other part of the world. In your own country that you love and care for so much. As a 20-year-old and a medical student, I went across to see this amazing country that all I'd ever read about was pieces in The Australian that really were very poorly balanced. I got to live in Umgany, I got to live in Linden, got to go to see Nelspruit putting up signs in their shopping centres, travelling up down Cape Town, worked in the gym industry there, and had an awesome time. I knew that these guys are my brothers and sisters. We are two great frontier countries with a great history.